When an affair ends...
It's very simple, sweetheart. We're finished.
The threats fly.
Famous lawyer kills mistress. That's not real good for business.
But when his prediction comes true, Columbo has a prime suspect.
The lawyer that never lost a murder case. That you, Crichton?
He's the one.
What's this all about, Columbus?
You killed her and you used me to help you.
Peter Falk upholds the law as Columbo, Saturday on Westcountry.
Next, David Young and Oliver begin a brand new journey around the West Country's cobblestones, cottages and castles.
Andrew Cooper's television series Secret Nature of the Channel Shore captured the rugged beauty of the Southwest's coastline together with its rich and varied wildlife. Now you can capture these glorious images of the West Country on 3 video cassettes. Secret Nature of the Channel Shore, now available from W.H. Smith.
On holiday, have a super day out at Land's End. Breathtaking scenery and lots of fun and excitement. Free entry for adult-accompanied children at Land's End.
A breakthrough in hair care. Organics is coming. The first ever root-nourishing shampoo.
When you want a conservatory from a company you can trust and 40% off, call Modec Free on 0800 23 24 25.
The South American grasslands, home to the smooth-billed Arnie of Ecuador. Unusual in the bird world, Arnies cooperate in building a communal nest where they lay their eggs and incubate them. But why do they never arrive at the nest without a leaf?
Whoever ends up holding the leaf is allowed to incubate. The leaf is a ticket to sit.
Cracking the green leaf code in Survival, Thursday at 7:30 on Westcountry.
Dream homes and a village lost to the sea. They're all in cobblestones, cottages and castles.
Well, I suppose most people's ideal home is a country cottage, you know, the sort of thing with a thatched roof and the rendered walls and roses round the door. There are plenty of them about. But back in the old days, you know, the 18th century, early 18th century, they were in a different situation altogether. They were built just as hovels, really, and 3 or 4 families would live in them. And, of course, they're at poverty level, and the Industrial Revolution came as a great boon in a way because many of them moved into the cities thinking there's plenty of money, good work, and good homes, but they just exchanged one form of poverty for another, really, because they had terraces of houses, which were just as bad as they were, and the sanitary arrangements even worse, in fact. But it's not all like that. Let me show you some lovely places we've still got here in the West Country. A village like Gittisham near Honiton is full of perfect examples of cob and thatch, ancient building skills which are enjoying an eminent revival today. The reason for thatch roofs, particularly in Devon, is because they aren't as heavy as other roofing materials for the cob walls to carry. Simply put, they're dwellings built of mud and straw. However, it's a very special sort of mud and a superior sort of straw. The basic process, whilst quite straightforward, does require a lot of skill and a good eye. Bundles of straw are tied to the battens nearest the eaves, which is the starting point. The thatcher then continues up to the ridge. He staggers the layers, and each of the layers is secured with hazel rods pinned to the rafters with iron hooks. Here we can see the old thatch being pulled away at eaves level, ready to be replaced with new reed. In the old days, heather, gorse and poor quality wheat straw were used as thatch, whereas today the modern thatcher usually uses reed as it can last for 70 to 100 years before requiring replacement. Long straw, basically corn straw, is still often used, but its lifespan is much shorter, some 20 to 25 years. Broadhembury is yet another of those glorious villages, virtually untouched by the passage of time. The church tower dominating the village, a pointer to heaven, and in medieval times, a symbol of church authority. It is interesting that as early as the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, there was a fear that the countryside would be as congested with cottages as the towns and cities already were, with their dwellings packed far too close to one another. At that time, an act was brought in against erecting cottages unless 4 acres of open ground went with them. Probably the earliest form of planning control, it was generally disregarded and finally repealed in 1775. It was an act difficult to administer, and had it been adhered to, then I doubt whether we would have had as many attractive rows of cottages which fill our village streets today. Well, there's a wonderful old Devon saying, all a cob wall needs is a good hat and a good pair of shoes. In other words, a decent roof and some good foundations. It'll last a lifetime. Well, 300 or 400 years anyway. We're in Hamstone country here at Montacute in Somerset, that wonderful golden-coloured stone from nearby Ham Hill. Sunshine seems to release from it a store of light, for it is one of those rare stones which, like Cotswold stone, varies in colour according to the weather. Although the main road cuts right across it, the village square, or borough as it's known, is one of the earliest examples of a square as such, not just in Britain, but possibly in Europe. The folly which dominates the village was formerly an ancient signalling tower. Many of the cottages have hamstone roofs as well. Often the weight was too much for the rafters, so they were only used at each level, the rest of the roof consisting of much lighter slates. Again in Norton, or Norton-sub-Hampden, to give the village its full name, there are stone cottages, but generally speaking the roofs here are thatched, sporting in many cases eyebrow dormer windows. You can certainly see how they got their name. This fine cottage has 2 things of particular interest: the porch made of immense slabs of hamstone, and the colour of the hamstone used in the main walls. There are several which are red in colour. This means that they had once been in a fire, and it's quite possible that they were taken from another fire-damaged cottage. Village greens abound in Devon, and here at Payhembury, cob and thatch successfully rub shoulders with Victorian cottages. The mixture of red brick and occasional cream brick courses is known as polychromatic. Such patterning is currently in vogue. The lifestyle of the very rich was such, during the late 18th and early 19th centuries, that they were blissfully unaware of the dreadful conditions of the cottages in which the working classes lived. To them, they appeared to be a charming country cottage. They were completely ignorant of the slum conditions which forced several families to live together in one dwelling. They too wanted to live the simple, idyllic way that they thought the average worker lived. So they built second homes, intending to live the simple life, with all the contemporary conveniences, but without the squalor. These desires, coupled with the fact that the Napoleonic Wars had closed the great continental resorts to the upper classes, meant that such second homes were very often built as seaside resorts. Places like Brighton, Torquay, or even here at Sidmouth. The style became known as Cottage ornée, and a perfect example of it is the hotel here, which is the Royal Glen Hotel. And it was here that Queen Victoria came as a small child and enjoyed her first visit to the seaside with her mother and father. It has all the features of the cottage ornée style: large canopies, battlements and pointed Victorian Gothic windows, the white walls glistening crisp as icing in the fresh sea air. The similarity to an ice cake extends to the Woodlands Hotel, formerly Old Hayes, where ornate eaves boards give the appearance of having been made of pink icing. The design of many such cottages was often taken out of pattern books, a sort of 19th century Daily Mail book of house plans. The bestseller at the time was J.C. London's rather pompous-sounding Encyclopedia of Cottage, Farm and Villa Architecture. Picturesque cottages in beautiful settings, threatened only by the passage of time. But here on the South Hams coast near Kingsbridge, the simple cottages which made up the tiny fishing village of Hall Sands became victims of the elements, entirely as a result of man's mismanagement. Even on a bright summer's day, the cliff top above what was once a thriving fishing village is bleak, awesome and quite frightening. Well, it was too blowy up on the hill there for me to finish my sketch. I come down here to put some colour on it and show you how I thought it would have looked in its heyday. It was a village which was a fishing village which for 300 years, in fact, had looked after the surrounding villages, supplying them with fish from the sea. And of course, during the winter months, they harvested the side of the slopes for wheat and grain, and they had little allotments there, so they were very much a self-contained unit. And there was something like 129 people living in 30-odd houses. And all was well until the turn of the century, when the government, deciding they wanted to rebuild the Plymouth dockyard, wanted aggregate. The only place to get it was from the bay here, from Stark Bay. So they started scooping it out, and there's the old story of man and his environment. We don't give a damn, really, what happens, because it certainly happened here. The level dropped 20 feet in no time at all, allowing the storms to come right into the village. And for several years, storms came in, but they managed to fight it off. They built a wall, they did that sort of thing. But the crunch came in 1917 when a terrific gale swept in and took the whole village away. People got away, of course, they managed to go, and there's just these few walls that are left. And of course, they now have got worn away with age and what have you. It's a sad indictment that just behind me is a notice which precludes me from going down and having a look, because it's now too dangerous altogether from the cliff as well as the sea. We've got a lot to answer for, if you ask me, especially as far as the environment's concerned. What a wicked lot we really are. Anyway, come and have a look at this drawing, because I'd like you to see how I think it would have looked. But the story in no way finishes among these tragic ruins. Far from it. Despite reassurances back in 1924 that all was well with the seabed, B Sands, a mile or so up the coast, suffered severe storm damage in 1960 and 1980. Landlord of the Cricket Inn at B Sands, Cyril Courtney, well remembers the storms.
First of all, there was a scheme devised for a sea wall, but then that was a bit too expensive in those days. So they then decided to put large stones, large boulders through here. But after the boulders were put here, it worked for a while, but then they gradually began to move. You see, everything was movable. And the sea would come underneath and would pull the boulders down, and more would have to be brought in. Well, this went on for about, several years. And then in 1979, we had one bad storm which really pulled the front of the village all to pieces. And they had to come down with a big scheme. So they thought, well, we'll put a sea wall. They brought a lot of stone in from Scandinavia and built a sea wall here, which, as you can see now, looks pretty permanent. I don't think we'll get much more problems now. They've driven piles right the way down 30 feet below the height of the sea wall, you see, which means to say now that we're protected underneath as well, so the under-erosion won't happen now. The only danger we would have now is sea going over the top, but quite honestly, with the return wave wall, as you can see, it's going to take an awfully big storm to get in over the top of us now.
The sea certainly looks pleasant enough in summer, but on a winter's day, things are very different. Cottages such as those at Hall Sands, virtually washed away overnight, can hardly be rebuilt in a day. But on a beautiful summer's day in the middle of Dartmoor, I discovered that nothing is impossible, and miracles can happen if you set your mind to it. You hear the birds? Skylark. We're right in the middle of Dartmoor, and if you tried to put a house here today, you'd be in real trouble with the planning authorities and the park authorities. But back in 1832, a chap called Tom Satterley decided he'd marry his sow. And they had to get a house somewhere. Now, things aren't quite as easy as they were today, by any means. So what he did was to evoke one of the old moorland laws, which said if he could build a house between dawn and dusk, it was his. on free land. Now, the farmers didn't like this sort of thing happening, and they really got quite upset. So what he did was to work out when Ashburton Fair was coming about and decided that the day before he would bring all the stones he wanted to build the house, all the bits and pieces from heather for the roof and sticks, put it in a ditch beside the plot he was going to put it onto, and wait till they left in the morning. Of course, it's exactly what happened. Off they went to the fair, and they laboured for about 9 hours putting this wonderful single-storey house up. They put a roof on, and just as the sun went down and the farmers came home, up came the smoke through the roof. But you can see it doesn't look like that today. If you look carefully, you can see underneath the ground floor the big boulders that were originally used. Got new windows and a door, and another storey on the top. And of course, a roof, a decent roof, not like the one like they had. I reckon it looked more like this, of a single-storey house, with these big lumps of granite here that they tumbled in for the base, and simple little wooden windows, which were little wood frames, doorway there. And on the top, they would have had this sort of dried, well, it almost looked like thatch, but it would have been dried gorse, really. And then, come the time to light the fire, up it came out through the top. It was interesting because dear old Sal outlived her husband by about 30 years, and she spent 69 years in that single house. But it's a lovely story, isn't it?
This autumn's drama at the Theatre Royal Plymouth. David Suchet giving the comic performance of a lifetime in What a Performance. John Nettles in the witty and elegant classic The Provoked Wife. Anton Rogers and Elizabeth Garvey in the beautiful and moving true love story Shadowlands. Laughs, lust and love this autumn at the Theatre Royal Plymouth.
When I played for England, I never settled for second best, so shredded wheat was my kind of cereal. Nowadays, my needs have changed, but my standards haven't. I still want bran fibre, no added salt or sugar, and 100% whole wheat. So it's got to be shredded wheat. Now that's my kind of delivery.
Nestle shredded wheat and bite size too.
There is no better cereal.
A new Whiskas recipe. Mouth-watering, scrumptious, and coming soon.
There's an effective indigestion tablet that doesn't leave a chalky, gritty taste behind. For fast relief in a soft, chewy tablet, try Remagel, or new Fresh Mint Remagel.
What a delight it is to find a complete village today, totally unspoilt by time. No overhead lines or other modern innovations like the motor car to ruin its appearance. Clovelly in North Devon has this amazing cobbled main street, which tumbles along the line of the old watercourse to the sea below. Still privately owned and carefully managed by John Rouse and his family, they have successfully been able to maintain its old world character and charm. Although Clovelly was recorded in the Domesday Book, it was George Carey during the late 1500s who was largely responsible for the layout of the village as we see it today. It was built then at a cost of around £2,000. He also incidentally built the harbour, which was later reconstructed in 1795 and finally lengthened in 1826. Fortunately, transporting most items had never been a problem in this once busy fishing village, for donkeys carried loads up the steep street, while sledges are still used today for the downward journey of goods. However, if it's all too much for you, then take the Land Rover service, walk down and ride back. Meeting up with owner John Rouse on the harbour wall, I wondered how long his family had owned the village.
We have owned the village of Clovelly for the last 250 years in my family, and recently it's passed through a number of female lines. We've been responsible for maintaining the village, and I, in the last 10 years or so, have been trying to increase the maintenance of all the cottages, and we're fortunate in having a large number of tourists coming to the village, and the income we get from tourism helps defray the costs of the maintenance.
And the CH is Christine Hamlin.
You see a lot of initials with CH. That's Christine Hamlin. She was a previous owner. She very wisely married a rich banker and persuaded him not only to devote his fortune to the estate, but also to change his name from Gosling to Hamlin. And with that fortune, they restored a lot of the exterior of the cottages. However, there are many where we've got the original features inside. And we've recently been restoring a fisherman's cottage, which we will be opening to the public shortly.
Foreman Tom explains the basic structure.
When the plaster was hacked off, we found the stone built up to here and then the cob up to there, and then this was added, this feature, for the extension of the cottage. But this is the general practice usually in most of these cottages, it's stone so far up and then the cob's taken up.
They're using cob for the repair work, but due to difficult site access, John Rouse has a team making cob bricks. I joined Charlie, Edward and Ken to find out how they're made.
It's subsoil and straw, and we mix it all up in a big pile and tread it all down and put some water with it, make it like a thick concrete.
Thoroughly mixed, they're ready for the next stage.
Put it in a mould. We got 2 moulds, one each end of the bench, and one rams it down, and the other 2 got fill the mould up, you see, and then the other chap, Ken and Edward, we do it between us. See? Ken is generally the ramming man. He rams it all down and runs from one to the other. That's how we make the back down. We open them out and put them on a bench or a shelf to dry out for a couple of months, and then they use them.
Well, there's a rare insight to an ancient craft which we are certainly privileged to see. You say they're repairing now the damaged walls. How old would they be, do you reckon?
Oh, 300 years or more, I should think.
So we're saying really that cob lasts better than almost stonework?
Yeah.
If you're going to build yourself a house this year, would you use cob?
Well, it'd be the cheapest way, wouldn't it?
I wonder whether we shall see cob back in general use as an accepted building material. I don't see why not. As Charlie says, it's the cheapest way of building a wall that he knows of. It was in this lovely village that famous author Charles Kingsley grew up. He based one of his main characters on local landlord Robert Yeo in his famous novel Westward Ho. And in a way, that seems to sum up the charm of this unique place. There's such a subtle blend of fact and fiction here that it's hard to differentiate between them. Well, from one form of rented property to another. We're back at Montacute in Somerset, and this is Fulford Terrace, a row of hamstone cottages with a difference, as I learned from Bert and Mabel Gaylord.
This was the first council houses built in this country, or the Yeovil District Council, rural council at that time, and they were built in 1912, and my mother and father were the first 2 tenants up here. I was born in 1922, and I've lived here ever since. It's been a great experience, I suppose, to stay in one house for the biggest part of your life, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What was the rent in those days?
The rent at those times was 3 and 6 a week. And then it went up about 20 years after to 5 in tuppence.
And they're comfortable to live in, are they?
Yes, very. Well, they weren't when they were built
first.
No,
when
they
were built first. They weren't when they were built
no
first.
Inside no bathrooms.
Yes, there was a bath in the what was the scullery. There was a bath in there. There was a bath there.
But there was no bathroom as such.
No, there was no bathroom as such. No, it wasn't.
An outside loo.
And an outside toilet. But that's always been modernised now. There's everything's inside.
So you don't still bath in the kitchen then?
No, not now. No, we don't have it in front of the fire or anything like that. No tin bath. We are modernised.
And you wouldn't move from here then?
I wouldn't like to move from here. No, I wouldn't. It's, I don't think so. I would like to move. I love it here.
How about you, Mabel?
Oh, well, sometimes I think I would like a bigger house, because it is only a 2-bedroom, because when they modernised them, they made one of the bedrooms into a bathroom, see, so it's only a 2-bedroom.
And it's all built in hamstone, isn't it?
Yes. The famous hamstone.
Building materials tell us where we are. If you're in East Anglia, it's flint. If you're in Devon, it's cob and thatch. But here in Cornwall, There's the two most strongest, most waterproof materials of all. That's granite and slate. And whilst they're grey and dull and all the rest of it, they really are very strong and they last forever. The smaller cottages like this had small bits of granite, but the bigger ones had huge pieces. And of course, the wonderful slate roofs. But this is no ordinary cottage. This is called Trewint, where we are. It's a tiny little hamlet, in fact. And it was here that John Wesley came more than once on his many trips and journeys into Cornwall. Let's have a look inside. I don't think they've oiled that since John Wesley came through here. Actually, they have, of course, because that was a long time ago. Actually, it was in 1743. There's a little two-room extension to a cottage, which was originally the place where he put up when he came down perhaps 7 or 8 times over the period of his pilgrimages, if you like, into Cornwall. It's a lovely little cottage because it's got lovely, straightforward paving stones, simple paving stones, a very simple ceiling, which is nothing more than beams and planks for the floor above. It's a dear little fireplace. And around us is a wonderful collection of bits and pieces referring to his 32 journeys that he made into Cornwall. There's various pictures, there's crosses, there's candlesticks, hourglasses, mementos of all sorts. But some of the loveliest stuff is upstairs. Come and have a look. I don't know about you, but I find something wonderful about places that famous people have lived or visited. And there's something possibly religious in the connection of this top room, because this was his own little prophet's room. And throughout the years, people have collected various things, little statuettes. There's a lovely one of him in his pulpit there. China figures, plates, all sorts of commemorative things. Books, chalices, Bibles. It's a lovely little room, plain and simple, whitewashed walls, as you would have found in cottages in those days. Nothing expensive at all. Over here is a letter in his own handwriting, which is nice to see. Gives you that feeling of presence. There's a stronger feeling of presence, really, because there's a notice up there. It says, do not leave this upper room without a prayer for yourself and others. Now, I've picked up downstairs one of his little prayers, which I think are highly appropriate to the way we live our lives today. God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. What a lovely little prayer.
Next week at the same time, David Young meets up with an Englishman whose home really is a castle. There is a book to accompany this series, which costs £9.99. More information about the book and the series can be found on teletext, page 638.
Tell me, do you love me? Oh, I can really lose. Do you love me? I'm in the groove. Do you love me? Do you love me? Now that I can dance.
Michael Ball hosts an all-singing, all-dancing extravaganza every Wednesday at 7.
On Channel 4 Classic Cars, next on Westcountry, kidnapping and blackmail provide the sinister backdrop to tonight's case for the bill.
Time to visit Barnstaple, the heart of North Devon. Time for leisure, for all the family. Time to experience the best in shopping. Time to explore England's oldest borough. Time to enjoy good food and hospitality. Time to visit Barnstaple.
You know Daz is good on whites, but did you know how good it is on price? Even compared to some shops' own brands. We asked people how they thought Daz compared.
I would have said the shop's own would have been an awful lot cheaper than the Daz.
The Daz would be more expensive, quite a lot more expensive, yeah.
So what is the difference in price, Pat? Only 10 pence in some stores?
Oh, 10 pence.
It's a lot less than I thought it would be.
I'm very surprised.
I thought it'd be an awful lot more than 10 pence.
Check it yourself against some shops' own brands. Daz whites cost less than you think.
Premier League, exclusively live on Sky Sports.
This evening, Arthur's nephew George is coming round for dinner. Of course, Arthur's is on the menu with delicious meat in jelly and no added cereal. But even though George may have the same taste in food, he certainly doesn't have the same taste in music. No other cat food is worthy of the name.
The publicity of an inquest puts pressure on the staff of Henry Park.
I wanted him away from my wife. I went to push him. Claire got in the way.
You have never treated me fairly, and you know it! And it wasn't my fault that Claire died, so then stop blaming it on me!
But Robert is more concerned with the welfare of the living.
Your new liver isn't working properly.
You mean you can't do anything?
Trying times for Dr. Nevin in Medics, tonight at 9 on Westcountry.
Now we're on duty at Sun Hill.